In this video, I'm going to talk about a visitation dream with my grandparents, who were not allowed to give me some important upcoming news, but gave me enough of a hint that was later validated. In 1996, my grandmother came to live with my husband and kids and me. Her health issues made it a challenge for her to be even at assisted living. After a year and a half with us, her health declined rapidly, and on my birthday in May of 1998, she passed away at home with me by her side. It hit pretty hard that she went on my birthday, which I felt was no accident. I'll never be able to forget what date she passed on. My grandfather, Papa, had sadly passed much earlier in 1990, and she had been alone since then. I knew she was at peace now. I had experienced many encounters with my Papa's spirit since he passed. I could smell when he was around. Smelling dead relatives is a quirky ability I've had since I was a small child. My Papa came around mostly in the car to alert me to some safety concerns on the road while I was driving. When he was living, he always had a strong protective streak over me and my safety on the road. When I was in college, he would drive me back to school from Walnut Creek to UC Davis after summer break. Later, when my son was born and we were living in San Diego and my husband Paul was out to sea, I wanted to drive up to the Bay Area to show the baby to the rest of the family. But Papa insisted on flying down and doing the 10-hour drive with me, then the return trip again to San Diego and flying home. That was some awesome dedication. So after he passed, a couple of years went by before I noticed anything. But I drove the kids up to the Bay Area for Thanksgiving with my grandmother in 1993, when Paul was already in Japan, where we would move in a few months. Following our visit, I loaded the kids back in the car for the drive home. There was a long stretch of the freeway going uphill where you couldn't see what was on the other side. Suddenly, the smell of my Papa was right in front of me at the steering wheel. I was overwhelmed. It was so strong and no mistaking it was him. I wondered if there was anything to be concerned about, and I started asking out loud, "What? What?" As soon as I reached the top of the hill and could look over to the other side, there was a long line of traffic at a standstill. Basically, dozens of parked cars on the freeway ended up lasting for over an hour. Back in San Diego, many years after that, he came in the car again. This time, a truck in front of me with an open back had a big piece of cardboard fly out of the truck and hit the front of my car. Thankfully, there was no damage. But since then, I know to be on the lookout if I smell my Papa in the car. He visited in a few dreams over the years, and I noticed him showing up looking more and more dapper. He was wearing a suit, and I felt he was either being more serious or had progressed somehow. Not that a suit is a requirement for progression, but it was used as a way to communicate that to me without words. When my grandma passed on my birthday, I hoped I would get a sign from her or a dream visit fairly quickly, but a few weeks went by and I didn't sense anything. Then, on July 20th, about 6 weeks later, I had a dream with both of my grandparents. I was in a small apartment, and in the doorway, I saw my grandma. She looked younger and was back to her younger, slim self. She was wearing a cream-colored silk outfit. I was stunned. She looked completely real to me. I hugged her tightly and told her I loved her. She told me she loved me too. Papa was there, sitting on a chair next to the TV. Grandma said something which seemed to have a different meaning later. She said after I died and was wanting to tell me something, but she was clearly not comfortable telling me. I could tell it was something serious. It was about something she learned after she died. She hesitated, and I could tell she wanted me to know something, but she was not allowed to tell me. She said, the 27th or the 29th. That wasn't enough information, so I asked her to tell me more. She left the room with my papa, and a man came into the room to help me. He was going to fix me a cappuccino. I didn't want a cappuccino. I wanted to know what was so serious. I told the man who had come into the room what my grandma had said. He looked surprised, and he said she wasn't supposed to tell me anything. I said to him she didn't tell me what was supposed to happen, and I asked him to show me pictures of it on TV. I knew he knew what was going to happen. I later realized he is one of my guides. He asked me to follow him. We went outside to a factory building like a warehouse that had a back entrance on the ground to go down into a basement area that was totally dark. I refused to go down there, and the dream ended. This was very puzzling to me. I tried to figure out where that place was, but I really had no idea. I felt later it was just a distraction to keep me from persisting with my question. I was greatly concerned by this dream for months. I was convinced something bad was going to happen, but I didn't have a clue about what, when, or who. The 27th or 29th, those seems like dates to me, but when? Then, November 27th, 1998, the day after Thanksgiving, I got a phone call from a woman in Seattle. I didn't know who she was. In a very choked up voice, she told me that my youngest brother, James, was her employee at their liquor store, and he was in the hospital. It didn't look good, and we needed to get there to see him as soon as possible. My brother had been working there for several months, and they were quite fond of him. On Thanksgiving night, he was drinking with a buddy, and at the end of the evening, they were staying the night at a friend's house, which was set back off the main road and not very easy to find. He must have added a Valium to the mix at some point, and after everyone had gone to bed, his heart stopped. His trusty dog Dolores was with him, and she knew something was wrong. She started barking and woke everyone up. The guy who lived there was actually a paramedic, and he called an ambulance and started working on my brother. But the ambulance couldn't find the house, and by the time they got there, he was likely brain dead. He was put on life support. I arrived in Seattle first, and my brother's boss picked me up at the airport. I was allowed to see him, and the doctor said there was no brain activity. It was completely heartbreaking. He was only 27 years old. I held his hand, and they were swollen, and he had a tube in his mouth, and I could barely recognize him, but I knew it was him. It had been a few years since we had seen each other, and I already grieved the years that we had missed. It just didn't seem real. My parents and 2 other brothers arrived the next day, and we had to prepare ourselves to say goodbye to him. We were in shock and torn apart. James had been the fun spirit of the family. When he was little, he took great delight in making us laugh as often as possible. He had been a very sweet person, but he had also gotten caught up in some unhealthy activities. In the back of our minds, we knew he was going to be at risk of something like this. As we sat in the conference room discussing what to do, he had a donor card in his wallet and a few small belongings. We decided to agree with his wish to donate his organs, but it was so hard. He was going to save 3 people, and while that provided some pride and appreciation that his death would not be in vain, we just wanted our James back. On the 29th, they were going to harvest his organs, and his body would be sent for cremation. We went to the apartment where he was living, and I didn't realize it at first, but it was the same layout as the room I had seen my grandparents in the dream back in July. After seeing his body off to the crematorium, we said our tearful goodbyes to each other and went our separate ways to fly home. James would frequently visit my mother in her dreams for the next year, and it provided a great deal of comfort, where she felt like she was having real visits with him. So while my grandmother had not been able to tell me what was going to happen, the 27th and 29th were significant dates, and the most significant dates that had happened to our family in a long time. And I have no doubt that this was the event she wanted me to know about. I have thought so many times, if I had known more, perhaps I could have helped prevent this outcome, and I wished it more than anything. While they may know when we are going to pass on to their side, they aren't supposed to tell us if it really was that person's time to go. A few years later, I finally had my own dream visit with James. In the dream, I was on a tree-lined street, like somewhere in Pasadena, talking with a friend, and in the distance, I saw a young man on a bike riding towards us. I tried to see who it was, and my first reaction was, "Is that James?" And as he got closer, of course, I could see him more clearly, and my heart just leaped. I noticed that the bike looked just like the bike I had owned when I was in college, which had been given to me by my boyfriend, later husband. Several years earlier, I had given the bike to my brother. In less than a week, it had been stolen from him. So here he was, showing me he had the bike, and he was happy. I walked up to him and gave him a kiss. I missed him so much. It felt real, and it was so full of everything we had wanted to say to each other, and the dream has been a wonderful gift to me ever since. Keeping a dream journal is a direct link to the magic of our dreams, and the experiences you may encounter can be awe-inspiring and even life-changing. If you would like to power up your dream recall, check out my video, 10 Ways to Improve Dream Recall. It's never too late to start keeping a dream journal. Why not start today? There are going to be many more stories like this one on my channel, so if you want to see more videos like this, please help support my channel by liking and subscribing. Hit that subscribe button now, leave a comment below, perhaps share a dream of your own with us. I'll be checking out the comments below. If you want to learn even more, there is a link to my book in the description below for Sleeping with Spirit, A Journey with Psychic Dreams. I hope you found this interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Sweet dreams.